Hello, friends, and welcome to the Cinemondo podcast with Kathy and Burke talking about One Piece.
One Piece. We're the pirate crew. We're the new characters in Luffy that were brand new characters that came on and no one knows who we are, what we're doing, and we don't either. So that's where we are.
Yeah, you haven't found out our superpowers yet.
We don't know what our backstory is. So
Yeah,
pretty soon you'll find out which dragon fruit we ate.
Which dragon fruit did we eat?
Or devil fruit. Which is it?
Devil fruit, yeah.
Devil fruit. Dragon fruit is wrong. See?
Dragon or devil? I don't know. See, we're such,
we're new. We're babies. We're One Piece babies, but we're trying. And one thing I like about this, and we mentioned it in our first review, haven't seen it, take a look at it, is that we are new to it. So we're trying to really separate the anime from the live action because we really like the anime. We're not experts yet. So I don't feel like it's fair for us to try and compare the two, even though we're in the same kind of universe right now. I really like to keep it separate because trying to do a live action adaptation is so hard. And I really want to give them the benefit of the doubt and the leeway that, to appreciate it for what it's trying to do and not to try and get too caught up in, well, they didn't do that right. They didn't do well, no, that's not what we're about. So and I'm going to wear this shirt every time I do one of these reviews because it's all I got. And my hat isn't right. So I have to get the hat. So I'll work on it.
The thing about a live action adaptation of an animated show or a live action adaptation of a book or anything that has a fan base, if everybody reads a book and the book has a huge following and then somebody wants to make a movie about it, the chances of getting everything right for everyone is about zero. You're not going to ever please everyone. But what you can do is you can show the audience that you care about wanting to give them what they might be expecting in a different way. It's like, because you can't do it, frame by frame exact like the anime. Otherwise, why not just watch the anime? So when you do a live action version, what you're doing, you use the word in the first episode, you use the word grounded. And I think that's a perfect word for it because you were also saying that it's a little bit lower key. It's not as manic and frenetic and insane as the anime because it's real people. And if you go nuts to that degree, like you were saying, it becomes extremely annoying really fast. But the other thing, it's, I've worked on shows that are adaptations of comic books. And so one of the things that we've talked about in our concept meetings is that what we're doing is, and this is kind of a loose conceptual thing. It's not official. It's not like in the canon, in the show Bible or anything. But what we talk about, my company, what we do is we talk about what we're doing is we're creating the live action version of the comic book. Basically, in this context, what we're doing is we're trying to create the reality that the comic book is a depiction of, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So when you're seeing the live action One Piece, what you're seeing is the reality, and then the anime is sort of the animation version of the reality, if that makes sense. It could be a vice versa thing in this case, but
that's true.
But the live action by its nature can't go quite as nuts as anime as far as visuals, but they are going nuts in the context of the story and a lot of the occurrences in it and the things, the locale and the world that they've created. And the fact that the lead character can stretch his body like rubber, that's still there.
That's right. And in keeping with that, thinking, because creatively, I think people really want this to work. It wasn't like Netflix being cynical and just like, let's just do a cash grab. I think they really genuinely wanted the creator's blessing. They wanted to keep it, in the same zone. So they hired like Mark Jost and Ian Stokes, both wrote and direct episodes of like some Marvel Netflix series. Now, some people might think that's a bad thing, but I think it's a good thing because they're used to making these kind of comic book anime, anime characters, these, fictional characters become more grounded and real and how would you say, like, not palatable, but realistic in a real world universe. And so I like the idea that they want to bring people in who know how to do this kind of thing. So
I know
Here
what
we
you
are.
mean. Palatable is a good word
Yeah.
because I think one good example, which is coming up in a future episode, there's a character in the anime who has a really long nose,
Yeah.
who who is like he has a long nose because of a Pinocchio reference, you know.
Yeah.
But then in the live action show, he doesn't have that long
Nope.
nose because that would be such a weird distraction, and it
Yeah.
would
It would
push
just be weird.
it would be kind of silly in live action, and you wouldn't be
It would.
able to stop looking at it and thinking about the actor with this fake nose on his face. And
Right.
so it works in the anime, but then when they went to live action, they I'm sure there were
Yeah.
discussions. Should we make it really long like in the anime, or should we make it half as long? And it probably got down to the point where it's like, you know what? Let's let the actor
Yeah.
put that into his characterization, you
Right.
know, instead of having this big ridiculous nose on his face the whole
Right.
time.
Exactly. So they bring in a very likable, good-looking guy who is someone we're gonna be on board with, literally and figuratively, on board with for the entire series. And I think what it seems like the decision, from what I can tell so far in these 2 episodes, they're saving the pushed caricaturish kind of freaky makeup or pushed character design more to the enemies and the foes because
Yeah.
they can do that and it makes more sense for them to be a little bit more, maniacal. But
Right.
our crew has to be, they're attractive, they're human, they're not like these weird characters you have to deal with makeup every day in the makeup chair because now you have to deal with this big nose and everyone's gonna be looking at the nose the whole time. So they just made him a good looking guy who brings out the character just by acting versus
Yeah.
character design, literally.
Right.
So I think it was a good choice because you're right, it would be so distracting. So
But the second episode that we're talking about today is called The Man in the Straw Hat.
that's right.
And this is when after the first episode, at the end of it, where
Yeah.
they sort of they get away from the Marines and they defeat the corrupt Marines,
Yeah.
and they and you know, Luffy and Zoro and Nami escape with the map of
Mhm.
their incredible map that they need to go find the One Piece. And they also have Kobe with them,
Right.
who, as they're leaving, Kobe decides, I want to stay. I want to try to make the Marines, because he's got
Mhm.
this dream that the Marines help people.
Yeah.
And and he and Luffy have this discussion, which is interesting. He's like, there's bad pirates and there's
Yeah.
good pirates, and that means that there must be bad Marines and good Marines, and
Yes.
you'll
Yeah.
be one of the good ones.
That's right.
And so he's got these dreams. He's got this ambition, this kind of optimistic ambition that he's going to become a Marine and be a good Marine and maybe help turn the Marines into
Right.
this good thing and get them away from this sort of corrupted version of the Marines. So that's why he wants to stay on
That's right.
Shell's Island. And so Luffy, Zoro, and Nami take off in the boat that Nami stole. and and then in
She's a
episode
navigator
2,
after all.
yeah, she navigates and she steals.
She navigates as he's a thief because there's a more of a thief. I think Luffy's calling her a navigator, but she's like, I'm a thief.
Right,
Get it
right.
right. So it's kind of funny.
But she
And
knows
I did
about
like
maps and
too
things,
when
evidently.
Kobe and Luffy talk when they split up and Kobe decided to stay. He's like, next time we meet, we might be enemies, which I thought
Yeah,
was an interesting little thing because they are on opposite sides. I mean, the
yeah.
Marines are technically anti-pirate, so but I thought that
But
was a
then
little
he says,
precursor.
"For now, we're friends."
That's right. But now, which is so Luffy. So,
Yeah, for now, we're
all right.
friends, yeah. So
Right.
anyway,
So
in the
now
second
this
episode,
was great. I loved this episode.
yeah.
This so I mean, because I'm a horror fan in general, so I thought this was perfect. Okay.
But there's always gonna be comparisons to, the Joker from Batman with anything
Yeah.
that's a clown, or,
Yeah.
Pennywise from It or whatever, with a scary clown. But, I think this scary clown, uh, works really well because it is, well, first of all, you got an actor in there, this guy, Jeff Ward, who I worked with on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Did a
Super
photo
nice
shoot with them.
guy.
That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just a nice guy. And also
Really
on
nice.
Shield, I think he didn't really get to push his abilities very
No.
much. He was very funny in it and very broad,
Mhm.
and he got to do some really funny things on
Yeah.
Agents of Shield. But if you want to see more of this guy, check out Agents of Shield. But
Definitely.
but as Buggy the clown, he gets to he really gets to sort of
Unrecognizable for one thing. It's so different.
yeah, but he really gets to sort of push the envelope here, and I'm sure there was a lot of discussion about, how to do a character like this without invoking, comparisons to Heath Ledger
Yeah,
or the other Jokers, Joaquin Phoenix or any other crazy, or,
yeah,
Pennywise, any kind of scary clown or whatever. So he had to kind of develop his own scary
yeah,
clown.
yeah.
And I think he did. You really don't, you watch him and you really I'm not thinking about the Joker or Pennywise,
No. No, he's a lot darker, and it does get into a kind of horror zone that gets very dark in there, and like he's inside his tent. It's super dark and creepy. He's got a kind of disheveled, you know, like he's been in this
Dirty,
makeup too
smelly, yeah.
long. Yeah, it's just like, ooh. And so, and even creepier, like the audience is chained in
Yeah.
in the whole
Like
circus tent. It's the only thing that's standing in the town right now. It's like everything was
yeah,
destroyed. So he basically is holding them all captive to watch his great circus. We can only imagine how terrifying that was.
yeah.
Because he's just terrifying. So we see him and he seems like kind of like we're in a way because as you're looking at this character versus the anime, you underestimate him. They get dropped into the middle of this. And they're like, who's this clown? What the hell is
Right.
this all about? And I love that. I mean, I didn't expect what was coming, even though I'd seen the anime. I was like, how are they gonna pull this off? So good.
Yeah.
It was probably one of the best fight scenes I think I've ever seen. It was
It's
so insane.
crazy. The
It
fight
was
scenes in the
insane.
show so far, the choreography, the fight choreography, which
So good.
I say it again, I've worked on a ton of shows that had a tons of fight choreography.
That's right.
Speaking of Agents of Shield and
Yeah.
some other Marvel shows and things where fighting is an aspect of the show that everybody
Yeah.
wants to see a fight in every
Mhm.
episode. And how do you do that without being the same fight over and over?
Yeah.
And you have these people with these different abilities or whatever, that's cool, but just the
Mhm.
choreography, it really is like creating and choreographing a dance. And
Yeah.
it
Yep.
it's precisely that. In fact, I know
That's
fight
right.
choreographers are very much there's the same kind of timing. It's like, okay, one,
Yeah.
two, three, fall, one,
Yeah.
two, three, they use music or musical pacing.
That's right.
And I'm looking at the fight scenes in One Piece, and they're so well done and they're so well choreographed and they're so fun to watch that you don't because a lot of times when a fight starts, I'm like, oh, it's time to go get
I know,
a
but these are
latte.
so original and so
Yeah,
crazy, and I feel like because the show is a little more grounded, when the action happens, it feels like, "Whoa," like, it becomes this big, huge, like, the centerpiece of, what could sometimes be numbing because they don't
yeah,
overplay the rest of the show. You get to go, "Whoa," and be astounded by the scene because the rest of the show is so a little more grounded and realistic, so when this happens, you're like, "Yeah, that's great," but if
yeah,
you did that constantly, you'd just be like, "Alright, I've got a headache."
yeah,
But they don't. They play it smart, I think. And they
yeah,
did it and they spend some time making this stuff look real, look really seamless. I'm not seeing, any kind of like weird like CGI scenes or anything. Like they
right,
do a great job, especially with his rubber stuff. It's so well handled.
yeah,
It looks they don't make it they make it really look like skin stretching. It's not like all of a sudden he looks rubbery or shiny or something. It just
yeah,
looks real. So it was the same thing with this amazing fight with Buggy, where you don't really realize what's happening, and then all of a sudden you realize they both had eaten the devil fruit.
right.
So they have these powers. You're like wondering, like, oh, what could his his power be? Well, you
And
find
he
out.
ate the chop chop fruit. So what
Chop
does
chop
that
fruit.
do? What
That
happens
doesn't
when you
sound
eat
good. It
Luffy
doesn't
ate the
sound
gum gum fruit and Buggy
right.
ate the chop chop fruit. So he's got the chop chop powers.
That's right. So you find out because Zoro finds this out because he's like, well, this should be easy.
Yeah.
Goes in there and go whoosh, and starts cutting him up, but you realize he can't cut him up because he cuts himself up and he can exist cut up. So he's got
Yeah.
like hands are coming off and they're still fighting.
He
His
flies
torso's
too.
in half. He flies around in the air with like pieces. It
Yeah.
was so crazy looking. They did such a good job on that. It was
They
terrifying and
did.
really
And
cool all at the
when the
same time.
pieces stick back on, it's like
And fight seems impossible. Like, how could you
Yeah.
possibly win? That's what was cool too, is that
Yes.
you feel like sometimes you're ahead of the show or ahead of a show and you're projecting, and you're like, oh yeah, this was gonna happen.
Yeah.
I was so like blown away by how it looked. I was totally not even thinking about how they're gonna resolve it. So when they resolve it, it was a surprise. Like, oh my
Yeah.
god, that's right. So it's really, I loved everything about that. It was so well done. And he, and the actor makes it seem like he's so cocky and fun.
Yeah.
And Zorro is so cocky and not as fun, but in a more sly, underhanded way. It was a great matchup. I loved it. And then of
Yeah.
course, they all get involved.
Well, Jeff Ward as, Buggy is so, extreme that there's
Yeah.
no we use that word grounded with the live
Yeah.
action compared to the
Mhm.
anime. There is a line that you cannot go over when you're
Yeah.
being insane, when you're being
Yeah.
a crazy person
Yeah.
in a show. You don't wanna be
Mhm.
ridiculous. You don't wanna be, um like, "Oh, that was stupid," or "That didn't
Yeah.
work," or whatever. But he's
Mhm.
got this intensity to him that is kind of intimidating, and that's the
Yeah.
thing that's missing a lot of times in
Yeah.
some the guy is dressed like a clown, and that is takes some points away from your
Yeah.
intimidation, you know?
Nobody likes clowns, number 1. They just don't
Yeah,
like
and it
them.
just
It's not even
he's got
scary,
the
they're
big
just little
red nose, and he's got the crazy pirate hat with the blue hairs coming out of it
hairs
and
all
all this
whoop.
kind of
Yeah.
stuff, and a lot of times with costuming and prosthetics like that and styling and also just the
Mhm.
set around him, a lot of
Yeah.
that stuff is so distracting and
Yeah.
it's like you're in this
Yeah.
place and your attention is over here, the actor is over there. It's like, "Oh, I'm supposed to be paying attention to the actor."
Yeah.
But he commands the attention, which is,
He does.
which is all on him. I mean, he's gotta
Mhm.
act through
Yeah.
that makeup and through
Right.
the styling and the wardrobe, and, his nose is covering so much of his face, he's gotta do it with his eyes and his
Yes.
voice and his
Yep.
presence and his
This is
his,
body
uh,
language.
physicality and all this
Yeah.
kinda stuff.
Yeah.
And that's what's so fun about performances like that. They have to do, 300% to act past their
Mhm.
styling, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, totally. And, and he does it, and it's a great scene, and, Luffy gets into trouble, and they do a great resolve of that. Um, just great setup, great scene, great villain. And in the middle of all that, we get some cool flashbacks to Luffy's
Yes.
childhood, how he becomes who he is. We get to meet the all, much talked about Shanks, who's a pirate that he kind of worshiped, that he wanted to be just like. And I love too when you see Shanks, he's kind of a, like, not an old, like, I was expecting old grizzled pirate, like,
Right.
kinda younger guy, but he has this kinda weariness about him that I really liked,
He's
like,
got a big scar on his face.
he's got that scar, which now Luffy has because he did it to himself. It's kinda funny. So he has this sort of, you know, paternal feeling toward Luffy, I think, like, he's kinda
Yeah,
protective of him. He tells him all about, like, how great it is to be a pirate. He has the straw hat, and you find out, "Oh, that's where the straw hat came from." And so, I love that he come when, you find out how, Luffy didn't really have a dad, they just show him kind of, a little bit,
street urchin.
yeah, just hanging around places where people would let him hang around. It was really sweet. It was a really touching scene, and they have a great scene where they're, out in a boat, and, we get to see the sea monster, which
Yeah,
they show in all the previews, which I loved. It's beautiful design, really well done, just gorgeous. And
yeah,
Shanks saves the day, saves Luffy, but at a cost. But he's so
yeah,
chill about it. He's so chill. He loses an arm in protecting Luffy, tells the sea monster, "Get out of here." And the sea monster's like,
yeah,
"Okay, I'm leaving." So he leaves. And you don't really understand, like, what was his power that he had that he was able to tell that sea monster to F off. But
yeah,
it was such a sweet scene. And so he gives him the hat, and that's why, like, the hat is, anything happens to the hat and Luffy loses his shit. You don't see
yeah.
him get mad really about anything until that happens. And I thought that was a cute thing. And now you see why, and it's even sweeter, even
Well,
cuter
there's
than
that scene, is it in this episode where Shanks gives him the hat, or is it in the next episode? I can't remember, but I think it was in yeah, it was in this episode. It was in episode 2, and that scene I thought was really well acted by the young actor who plays young
yeah,
Luffy.
really good.
Um, the scene where Shanks puts the hat on his head, he's about to leave, and,
Yeah.
one of
So I
his
won't
crew
be
members
back.
says, "We have the supplies for several months," and Luffy's
Yeah,
like, "Months?" And he
yeah,
says, "How long are you gonna be gone for? When are you coming back?" And he says, "We're not coming back."
uh-huh,
And so he realizes this is the life of a pirate. but you also realize that this is where Luffy gets his conviction to be a good pirate, because
Mhm.
Shanks is I mean, that's the thing about this show that's so interesting, that there can be a good pirate. It's almost like you're
Yeah.
pretending to be a pirate. You're playing pirate,
Yeah.
and you're going
Yeah.
out using the Jolly Roger and you're a pirate, but you don't get the impression that Luffy wants to go out and kill people and steal their
Yeah.
treasure.
Yeah.
He just wants to go out and have fun and go out on a
He loves
boat,
out
and
on the seas in my ship
whatever
with my
happens.
crew, finding treasure. Like, he's never about, like, kill, rape, pillage. It's all about, like, we'll be out having adventures. Like, it's all a very like you were talking before, childlike sort of view about what a pirate is and that they can
Yeah,
be good.
just
Which I
hanging out
really
with
like.
your friends on a boat. What could be more fun, It's like we have
His
our own
crew, we're
boat.
not your crew.
Yeah.
Hang out with those people. So
But
funny.
that's where he gets that from
Yeah,
Shanks, and I think when
yeah.
Shanks puts the hat on his head and you see the
Oh, it's so
brim kinda
cute.
comes up like
Mm,
that, his
yeah,
eyes have tears, and it's such a touching scene where the
so
little boy
good.
is just so sad that his his father is leaving, and that's
No.
also the thing too where you feel like he develops this loyalty idea to his friends, like,
Yeah.
Shanks says something to the bad pirate in the inn at one point where he says, "You can do whatever you want to me, but don't ever threaten my friends."
Yeah,
And that's when they first wake up and start fighting these bad pirates, and Luffy
yeah.
sees that and he realizes there's he's always talking about not there's a way to solve things without violence, but then sometimes you have to resort to
Mhm.
violence when people threaten your friends. If somebody
Exactly.
threatens your friends, then it's like, okay, all bets are off.
Yep.
And so that's the things that he learns from Shanks. Defend
Yeah.
yourself, but
Mhm.
don't be the bad pirate. And the great
Exactly.
line that Shanks has, I think the last thing he says to little Luffy is, "Be good."
Yeah,
And I
so
think
good.
that's the most profound line in the show right there. Be good,
That's right.
because that's that's your flag, that's your
Yeah.
Jolly Roger.
That's right. I know, and I like too how just cinematically how the buggy clown stuff is dark and dreary and depressing, and even his makeup, even though it's supposed to be bright, it just has a worn out look to it, just
Yeah.
kinda gross. And whenever they show Luffy's childhood and they show Shanks, it's got this golden light, and it just seems so comforting, and he's hanging out in, like, these little pirate village looking things, like you'd
Yeah,
see in, like, Warcraft and Booty Bay or something. It's like,
exactly,
it's
yeah,
very cute, and it's all just this beautiful gold light, seems very optimistic. You almost kinda see where Luffy kind of almost adapted the sort of, uh, goodness of his childhood into his full-on attitude that was then reinforced with the devil fruit maybe, but I like that golden light, dark and gross, golden light, dark and gross. Like, they had this beautiful juxtaposition between what was happening with Buggy and what was happening in his childhood. I thought that was really a nicely
yeah.
built-in episode, that little
And you
extra
also
touch.
get a little bit of I mean, in the first episode, Luffy is all bright and cheery and
Mhm.
optimistic and everything, and in this one, you kinda get there's a point where you think
Yeah.
that Luffy's about to die, and it becomes
Yeah.
very dire for
Mhm.
Luffy. And you also realize his weakness. You feel like in the
Yeah.
first episode, and in some cases, you feel like, well, he's kind of like Superman in a way. It's like nobody can beat him because
How
he's
can you
an
kill him?
excellent fighter and he can
Yeah.
stretch, and a bullet. You can't even
Mhm.
shoot him with a bullet. But
That's right.
then in this episode, you find out his weakness, and only someone else
Right.
who has eaten the fruit knows this secret, evidently,
That's
that
right.
when you eat that fruit, you get a power, like a different power. Each fruit gives you a different power, but
Mhm.
the gods of the sea reject you.
That's right.
You can no longer swim, and when you
Yeah.
get into the seawater, it takes your powers away. So when Buggy puts Luffy in one of those sort of
Yeah.
magician's water escape boxes, and the water starts filling up, Luffy can't stretch. He can't get out, and he
Yeah.
doesn't have his
Nope.
strength. So
Ugh.
he's just in this water, and the water
It's
is filling up
impossible.
higher and higher. Yeah, and
Yeah.
you're like,
So
That's
sad.
how does he get out of this?"
How does he get out? I know. So great stuff. I really liked it. So far, after just 2 episodes and just the short amount of anime we've seen, we're in like about around 50, but we're doing
Right.
reviews of each arc as we go. We're gonna keep watching them and reviewing them. So be sure and subscribe so you don't miss any of our One Piece stuff. Um,
Yeah.
But I really, first of all, I'm kind of a sucker for any kind of piratey stuff. I just love the vibe. I love the swashbuckling, pirate, the ships, everything about it, the styling, everything. And so that is just such a comfort zone for me. So just even watching this, maybe that's why I'm also like just giving it a pass on a lot of things that people maybe complain about. I just love the genre in general. So having
Yeah.
Luffy, who's so great and optimistic, it's fun to see that for a change because you just don't see it. And then
Yeah.
just to have these great characters that are being, great camaraderie. You can tell the actors, really work well together. And then have this really lovingly built and realized, set design and makeup and wardrobe. It's like they spent some time and some real attention on detail. And I really appreciate that. Like,
Yeah.
narratively, if it's not hitting all notes, they are trying to condense a lot into 8
Yeah.
episodes. So
The other thing I was gonna talk
unfortunately,
about.
some characters that we really liked, we're not seeing in this, but
Yes.
that's okay. We're seeing ones we do like. So
Yeah,
we're
they're
we're
really
going in
having to
with a
work
Luffy attitude. Very optimistic.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
But like you said, yeah, they are having to condense. They're having to really condense
Yeah.
a lot of things. And they've left out a few things that I wanted to see, and they've
Yeah.
included things that I don't remember seeing, things that weren't there. But they're doing it in the service of the story, and
Mhm.
I think it's consistent, and I think it
Right.
flows. There are certain things that they left out that I think about it and I'm like, yeah, it was probably a good idea to leave that out because that would have been like almost a whole episode to tell
Yeah.
that part of the
Exactly.
story. And what they're doing is they're trying to tell the story of Luffy and his friends and not sort of go off on the tangents
Mhm.
of other characters' backstories that
That's
don't
right.
really that aren't really our core
Yeah.
group.
Yeah, this is Luffy's story.
Yeah, and it's the story of the formation of the Straw Hat Pirates,
That's right.
and this bonding
Straw Hat
friendship.
Pirates.
Yeah, we have our own pirate flag, don't we?
We do. Where is it?
I don't know. Um,
I don't We'll put it up there. You'll see it. We're gonna make a
maybe
shirt
it
out
just
of it.
appeared right when I said that. Maybe it just appeared,
There it is. I know, and
Yeah.
you can get that on a shirt because 'cause I'm gonna wear it. I'm gonna get one any day now.
Yeah, I
Alright,
was
you guys.
yeah, you have to tell me if that pirate flag is better than Luffy's or Usopp's.
I think it looks like Luffy did it. It looks like he
Yeah,
drew
it's
that
yeah, it looks like he took about 1 minute to draw that, yeah.
because
So
even his crew didn't particularly love his flag, even though I did.
a
Alright,
little
you guys.
lopsided. Thanks
Be
for
sure
joining
and
us.
and watch along with us. Be sure and check out our next review of episode 3 coming up soon. Bye. Bye.